The Road Home by Stroke. Chapter 4. Dog's Gambit. I think I've got it! Clank! A resounding clank emanated from beneath the royal train car. Twilight's harsh shouts followed soon after. Ow! Twilight levitated herself out from beneath the train car, rubbing her head while carrying a hunk of crystal in her magic. Her body was covered in dust and minuscule fragments of gems, and her brow was furrowed with frustration. Why does everything in the Crystal Empire have to be made out of crystal? I mean, really, what's wrong with metal? The Crystal Empire isn't exactly filled with ore mines and smelters, and the Empire's crystal could be stronger than metal, Shining said as Twilight walked toward him. He and Nyx were relying on the improvised blanket and black things. Philly had been distracting herself with a game of solitaire with a deck of cards, though it was an exercise in futility. They had lost 4 cards from the deck when they hit the rock slide. Cadence was trying to nap under the shade of nearby trees, though her frequent tossing and turning made it evident she was struggling to stay comfortable. Spike was having no such issue. He was sprawled out in the sun, snoozing away with his gambling glasses on. Maud was the only other pony up and about, inspecting the breaking apart the rocks that fell from the cliffside in an effort to clear the tracks. Sure, but that doesn't do us any good if I can't fix it, Twilight said, as she glared at the bit of crystal that had snapped loose from the bottom of the train car. The brakes are still locked up after that rock slide, and now I've broken this off. I don't even know what this is! Twilight, remember the trick Cadence taught you? Twilight puffed out her cheeks, but she took Shiny's advice all the same. She took in a deep breath and breathed it out while her forehoof followed the common gesture Cadence had taught her. She did this twice, then rolled her shoulders. Okay, I've calmed down. Are you sure? Shining asked as he watched Twilight plop down on the opposite side of the picnic basket. Twilight nodded, setting the broken hunk of crystal down and looking on the western horizon. It's starting to get dark. Nyx looked up from the cards, having once more come to the spot where the missing 3 of clubs had doomed her to losing the game. I'm starting to get hungry too, Uncle Shining. I thought you said the guards would come and find us a long time ago. I know I did, and they should have been here by now. I'm starting to think something happened. Like what? Twilight asked. I don't know, but I wonder if that rock slide was really an accident. Shining slowly got to his hooves, stretching his legs, shaking his head, before looking back down at Twilight. We should figure out how to get back to the Empire on our own. At the very least, we should start a fire and figure out where we're going to sleep before it gets too dark. Couldn't we stay in the train car? Nyx asked, as he began to collect and stack the playing cards. Shining laughed a little, nodding his head. Yeah, the card would work for tonight, which means the only thing we need to worry about is fire and food. You mean firewood and food? Twilight lifted up a hoof, pointing to her left. Don't forget, we have a fire-breathing dragon with us. So, we're basically going to be camping. Nyx looked Shining down at a moment, then began to smile as excitement built in her body. Oh, can we tell stories around the campfire? When my friends went camping with their big sisters in Rainbow Dash, they told stories. Oh, and can I go get the firewood, please? Shining glanced at his sister with a smirk before focusing attention back on Nyx. Sure, just go grab Spike. When you're camping, you should never go off into the forest alone, and you should never go too far away from camp. 10. When we discuss what Nyx was doing during Crusaders of the Lost Mark, there better be tears of Nyx clumping her friends, because like her, they have kite shields! Nyx nodded, quickly scampered to wake Spike up from his nap. As he did that, Shining looked at Twilight. Why didn't you take Nyx along this camping trip with her friends? She and I were watching a comet through my telescope that night. We didn't even know all my friends and their friends had gone off until they had already come back. But don't you worry. Though camping was never my favorite thing, she and Spike and I will be going along the next trip sometime in spring. Just don't take any books with you, Shining said with a playful, knowing smile. The few times we went camping with Dad, you always spent more time reading than you did anything else. Hey! I was reading nature books! Twilight and Shining smiled at the memory, but then their faces failed as they faced the reality of the situation. So, Do you really think this could have been planned? The guards should have found us by now. Since they haven't, we have to assume the worst. It might be days before they get here. Normally, I'd be okay with roughing it for a little while, but... Shiny fell quiet a moment and looked over his shoulder at his wife. I'm worried about Cadence in the fall. After everything she's been through, I don't think camping out in the middle of the forest is something the doctor recommended. Twilight nodded her eyes and wandered to Spike, who was yawning and stretching, as he and Nex headed into the forest. I'm worried about the fact Celestia hasn't responded to the letter I sent her. She could have flown out here with a chariot to rescue us by now. If this was planned, I hate to think of that whoever was doing this was able to intercept my message. Twilight looked back to Shining. So, what's the plan? We can go to Lumberton. Shining and Twilight jumped, quickly turned her heads to see Maud. She had crept up behind him, while they had been focusing on one another in Cadence, as silent as stone. Still, Maud paid little mind to the scare she had given to the pair. She glanced down at the dirt a moment, dug a little in it with her hoof, and when her curiosity about it passed, she looked up back at them. Lumberton is the closest town. It's where I get my supplies and send letters to Pinkie Pie. How far is it? Twilight asked. It's a little more than a half a day's hike from here. Shining brought a hoof to his chin, and tapping it gently as he thought. That isn't too far. We could probably follow the train tracks all the way there. If you follow the train tracks, it would take a full day. Maud looked down at the dirt and resumed scratching it with her hoof. This time, however, her purpose was artistic. She drew out a rough shape, depicting the mountains in the area as well as the train tracks. She marked their position in the spot where Lumberton was with a big X. The trail through the forest goes straight through Lumberton. The tracks go along the ridge line. It might take longer, but it might also be safer. Twilight said as he studied the dirt map. If the guards are coming to look for us, they'll be looking along the tracks. If we follow them to Lumberton, we'll be able to get to town without diminishing our chances of being found. I'm a little worried about asking Cadence to walk all the way. Also, the rock slide was planned. We may run ever into whoever orchestrated along the tracks. They may very well be the reasons why the guard hasn't reached us yet. I think we should follow the trail through the forest. Through a tiny hole in the cliffside, a single eye watched the royal family as they picnicked beside their abandoned train car. The eye belonged to a tall, long-snout, lean-built diamond dog who stood in a tunnel that had been dug in the interior of the cliff face. With only a few inches of rock separating it from the outside world, the lean dog was not alone either. Behind him in the tunnel, peeking through several other smaller holes at varying heights, were a dozen more of members of his pack. It looks so beautiful. What kind of gem do you think it is? Do you think everything inside is made of jewels too? Duke's packmates were rambling in hushed voices about the crystal train that was sitting on the tracks. This was what had drawn them in. Their small prospecting party, which had been surveying Rainbow Ridge, had seen the familiar glint of a gemstone from a nearby ridge. They'd been hoping to discover a small, exposed outcropping of crystals. It was perhaps the biggest hunk of crystal any of them had seen. This diamond dogs, they were naturally excited. Even in the periphery of Iris' vision, Duke could see the wagging of his comrades' tails. But his comrades remained fixed on the ponies instead, the gears in his mind spinning as he weighed his options carefully. Duke, they're the only ones here! The small scampering of paws drew Duke away from his peephole. The smallest member of the group, a scuffy little dog named Biscuit, was running out the tunnel toward everyone else. Quickly ran under and over and all around the other dogs before stopping next to Duke. Biscuit was making no effort to hide his excitement. He was young. This was his only second or third prospecting expedition. They had stumbled upon the mother lode. They have no guards? Duke asked, having to really crane his head down to focus his eyes on Biscuit. No one! I checked all around. They're the only ones. What about wings and horns? All of them except the dragon and grey one has magic horns, and 3 of them have wings. The purple one, the black one, and the fat big one. That's a lot of magic. The words were followed by a long wet slurp. The concern had come from the largest of the group, a heavy, drooling diamond dog who held the build and stature to rival a buffalo. Though some of that size was because of his thick, fluffy coat. It was a dog truly built for colder winters. The pack was as a whole facing the Rainbow Ridge. That's okay, Buck! Biscuit yipped to the largest duck before looking back to Duke. They're leaving! I overheard the purple one, the white one, and the gray one. They're going to try to love again. They're going to leave the crystal, and we can take it after they left. Don't you think they'll come back for it? Buck asked. Who cares? Come on, it'll be ours. Come on, Duke, let's take it. Please, let's take it. We can roll it on rails. It'll be so easy, and they'll never find us. Come on, let's take it. Take it. Biscuit, shush! Duke snapped, quieting the small, bouncing diamond dog before peeking out back of his peephole. He silently contemplated the situation, but with each passing second, the smile on his face grew louder. It was merely the blossoming of a plan with his idea, a daring gambit. We will take the car, he said as he turned to the rest of the dogs. Really taking the ponies, too. Why take ponies? Biscuit asked. Ponies are not gems. You'll gain even more gems. Duke raised his paw and began scratching designs on the wall. First, the lines were nothing, but slowly, surely, they began to form a shape that all diamond dogs recognized. It was a shape none of them but Duke had seen in person, but they had heard through his stories and lessons that they were known to every pack on the continent, if not the entire world. The pink pony! She is princess of the Crystal Empire, Duke said as he finished scratching out his crude sketch of the Empire's central castle. I bet the purple one and black one are princesses, too. We have 3 pony princesses out there, and ponies care about their pretty princesses. I say we pump-nut them and demand a ransom. But I thought there were only 2 pony princesses, Sunmover and Moonmover, Buck said, before slurping a particularly dead slobber. Alright, when did the ponies get 5? It doesn't matter. What matters is that they are unguarded, and none of them are Sunmover or Moonmover. If we capture them, we'll be able to get more than 1 crystal crane car. We'll get a whole terrain car, 100 cars long, with each car filled to the brim with even more glittering gems. Think about it, Duke said, stepping amongst his comrades. Each of us could be living in a crystal, with more wealth than we know what to do with. The pack will call us champions. Every dog will know of us as the ones that finally struck a blow against greedy ponies who rule this part of the continent. But what about your magic? Buck said. One of them have horns. One is a filly and the other is fat. That means we only have to worry about 2, and ponies are sentimental. Duke brought his paws to the tunnel wall again, scratching out shapes that formed and represented the rudimentary parts of his plan. We'll go after the easy ones first. We take Dragon, Filly, the fat one, and the gray mare. Then we use them to force Purple one and the white one to do what we say. After that, we load them all up in their train car and hide them someplace. Then we send messages to ponies demanding train or crystal. When they give it to us, we'll tell them where to find their princesses. Duke's smile grew, lips peeling back to reveal sharp, carnivorous fangs. Then we leave as alphas for the rest of our lives. Yes! Biscuit said, bouncing over excitement. Let's find out the ponies! The other dogs began to bark and wag their tails in agreement. Okay, some ponies having way too much fun with this. Even Buck, who had been the most conscious, was grinning at the thought of the gems. Duke smiled back at all of them. Yes, they'd all be well off when they finished, but he'd be the best. He was, after all, the alpha of this prospecting group. He would get the biggest share, while the others got 1 car. He would get 4, plus the crystal engine pulling the crystal train. With all that, he would become alpha of the Rainbow Reds pack. Fate had given him an opportunity. He would seize it with the simplest plan of all, a plan that paid off the pony sentimentality. The white one and purple one wouldn't dare do anything to put the other ponies in jeopardy. It was all so simple. What could possibly go wrong? Let me start. First off, Master of Shield Magic. Second of all, Goddess of Magic. Third of all, Pregnant Man with Hormones. But let's say that you missed. Oh, and Very Strong Earth Pony. But let's say we pull this off. Let's say it works. You're still dealing with Celestia and Luna, who will be ticked off and will drop a solar flare on you. Yeah, I think you've done effed up. Big time. What if we split up? Mon and I could go along the tracks in case we run into guards, and you could take every pony else through the forest. Shiny shook his head as he, Twilight, and Mai remained huddled around the map in the dirt. No, Ma's the one that knows the forest. If we go through the forest, she has to be there to make sure we don't get lost. And I don't want you going along the tracks by yourself. I could take Nyx's Spike with me, Twilight proposed. Shiny tapped himself a few times. His eyes focused on the map as he glanced up at Twilight. You could, but I don't know how much help they would be if you ran into trouble. And there could be trouble. What if we left some kind of note or sign here for the guards, so they know where we went? I think we have some paper in the train car. And if we don't have ink, we could burn the messages on paper with magic. Then all we have to do is put the note someplace where it'll be easy to find. That isn't a bad help! Instantly, Twilight's mind went from careful planning to panic. She got there close and looked in the direction of the forest. Nyx! She took a step toward the trees, ears lowered and wings ready to carry her in hurried flight. There was a few moments of silence, and then she saw a burst of green light. Spike's fire. After that, the stillness of the silence of the forest returned. In spite, the Twilight's concern only grew. Maud! Cadence! Shining shout made Twilight quickly turn around. Maud and Cadence were gone. Nothing but air remained where the two mares had been. Tunnels had opened up beneath them, and swallowed them whole like gaping maws. Twilight stared blankly at the nearest tunnel, and from the back of her mind, a memory came tumbling to the forefront of her consciousness. Diamond Dogs! It's Diamond Dogs! Very smart, Purple Princess! The unfamiliar voice came from the direction of the train car. Both Twilight and Shiny turned to look to see its source. A lanky, long-nosed diamond dog stood on top of the car, and below them 3 tunnels opened up in the soft earth. From nearby those tunnels, nearly a dozen dogs came crawling out, bringing with them Maud, Nyx, Spike, and Cadence. Cadence was held by the Dolores, his massive hands holding onto her neck and wings. Bits of slobber spilled from the corners of his mouth, dripping onto Cadence's back and making her shiver in crayons. Spike was held upside down by his tail by another dog, while he was swinging with his claws, trying to punch the dog in the nose. The dog, however, just laughed and smirked, taunted Spike by putting on his gambling sunglasses. The smallest dog in the group was keeping Nyx pinned, the same way the largest was holding Cadence, a paw on the wings, pinning him together behind the back, the other claw on the neck. Twilight could vaguely remember reading somewhere that pinning wings like that was a somewhat safe way to restrain creatures like Pegasi and griffins, though her blood boiled at seeing Nyx treated as such. Maud was the last one to be drawn out of the tunnels. She was on her back, each hoof held by a diamond dog. A few of the dogs restraining her, which bruised and beaten. One had an eye already swelling shut. Their expression made it clear she was still struggling, though Maud herself looked calm as clear as ever. Let them go! Now! Shiny demanded, as a magical aura flared from his horn, a spell that would fire by a thought. We don't take orders from you, pony, Duke snapped, as he looked down from the top of the train car. You greedy ponies! You have all of Equestria! You have Crystal Empire! While Diamond Dogs live off scraps! No more! You will come quietly! You will be hostages! And you encourage Sun Mover and Moon Mover to give us whole day or crystal! If you don't, we are shoving our claws on these four! Shimmy-claws! Shimmy-claws! Biscuit said, bouncing his grip on Nyx tighten, making the filly cringe. Twilight took a step forward at this, as if wanting to tackle the small dog for even that small bit of pain Nyx experienced. But Shiny held her back for a moment. He shook his head, silently telling her not to attack, but Twilight could see in his eyes. He had no intention of bowing to the demand of the Diamond Dogs. They needed to play it calmly. Do you really think you could get away with this? Shiny shouted to Duke. Even if we go with you now, we can escape later. All it would take is the right spell and the right time. If you let them go now, though, we'll forget this ever happened. Escape! You tried to escape. We heard someone. Maybe we start with Little Dragon, or perhaps Little Filly. I heard it hurts to have feathers plucked, and she has so many little feathers on her wings. Duke smiled, only grew. Don't worry. We have magic suppressors at Pax Den. Once we get back there, all of you will be as defenseless as our friends. No magic, no wings. They're our family, not just our friends, Twilight snarled. I'm not. I'm just a friend, Maud said flatly, even as she continued to struggle against the other 4 Diamond Dogs, who held her down. I'm not as defenseless either. And neither am I! Spike shouted, before drawing in a deep breath. Then he breathed out, unleashing a surge of fire straight into the face of the Diamond Dog holding him. The dog yelped, and quickly dropped Spike, tumbling back from the flames and the sunglasses that were melting a little on his face. His failing led him to trip over one of the dogs holding Maud, freeing one of her hind hooves. That one free hoof coiled back like a serpent, then struck the bone-cracking smack against the ribcage of another dog that was holding her down. That dog was sent flying down to force of the blow, and soon the two others followed. Spike's one burst of fire caused chaos, and it was chaos Twilight and Shiny quickly took advantage of. Twilight rushed the small dog holding Nyx, while Shiny launched a blast of magic into the face of the largest dog. Duke! Fisk yelped, trying to quickly releasing Nyx and diving into the nearest hole with his tail between his legs. Twilight urged her host to move at a greater pace. She would only need a few more seconds to close the gap between her and Nyx, but the small dog's yelp didn't go unneeded. With a thud, the Duke landed between Twilight and Nyx. He lunged with one fist, striking Twilight in the chest. Her own forward momentum worsened the blow. Twilight crumpled to the ground. At that moment, Duke spun around and grabbed Nyx and Spike, taking one in each paw before throwing them into the train car and climbing himself. Get the others! We take two little ones! Get car moving! A few of the Diamond Dogs had been trying to recapture Ma, wolfed an acknowledgement, and quickly rushed to the nearest train car. They dug their paws into the ground and tried to shove the car, but the wheels refused to budge. Twilight grunted through her teeth, pushing through the pain of getting back to her hooves. She began calling on her magic. The aura enveloping the entire car. She lit the whole thing off the tracks if she had to. Already the car began to swift as her magic applied a greater and greater lifting force. The wheels began to lose touch with the tracks. A Duke had to brace himself against the car's door frame. But then a resounding thud hit the car, knocking it three of Twilight's magic. The thud came from the largest Diamond Dog, the one who had been holding Cadence. Shiny had gone after him the moment the fighting began. After a scuffle, throwing the dog clean into the air. The dog flew like a bird for a few brief seconds, then came falling back to earth like a stone that landed firmly on the roof of the train car, knocking it free from Twilight's magic. With the spell no longer holding it up, the train dropped back onto the tracks, the wheel making a deafening clank as they reconnected with the tracks and began to turn. The impact of the landing freed up the brakes, and with a shove of the Diamond Dogs, the train began to roll downhill. You want little ones back? You've did it, Autobahns! A traitor crystal! Vivid crystal! In 3 days! Duke shouted as his dogs piloted the car, adding their own momentum as the train began to rumble away. In the window, Nyx and Spike appeared, both looking back at Twilight. But before they could even cry out for help, they were grabbed by paws and pulled out of view. Get back here! In a single leap, Twilight was airborne, flying after the train car with all the speed she could muster. She was gaining quickly, but the train car was accelerating as well. Without the guidance and presence of a locomotive, it was careening down the tracks at speeds greater than intended. On some turns, the car leaned so far to one side, some of the wheels began to lose contact with the tracks. Still, the Diamond Dogs didn't even try to apply the brakes, even if they were ruined. Twilight reached out with her magic as she flew, grasping the back of the train and trying to slow it down. The dogs, however, took quick notice. Soon, they began to throw anything they could from the train's interior. They broke apart the car table, took the sheets from the bed, and anything else that wasn't bolted down became a possible projectile. One particularly well-laid pillow forced Twilight to bank up. As he did, she could see a large stretch of train tracks. For the next several miles, the tracks sloped downward. But that wasn't Twilight's greatest concern. What worried her was the next bend of the tracks. It was a sharp turn near the edge of a cliff, and at the car's current speed, it wouldn't make the turn. It would roll off the tracks and down the edge of the cliff into the valley below. Knowing that danger was quickly approaching, Twilight dove back towards the car and resumed her efforts to slow it down. She reached out with her magic, but as before, the dog threw things at her, forcing her to break her concentration and avoid being knocked out of the air. You have to slow down! She shouted, pleading with them. You'll never make the turn! Duke poked his head out of the car's front door, glanced down the tracks. It was a glimmer of hope he could see reason. Instead of applying the brakes, Duke just looked back at Twilight and smiled. Then he disappeared into the back of the car. A few moments later, the dogs began throwing out even more things at her. From the back of the train and every window, the Diamond Dogs were chucking everything they could to keep Twilight from slowing the train. The train was looming closer. Soon, there wouldn't be enough time for her to slow down the car. Twilight's breathing began to glow ragged, both from the effort of flying and from her own panic. She had to at least make sure the train could turn. She couldn't let it crash, not with Nyx and Spike inside. So she flew in closer, trying to dodge while casting her spell. Her magic began to wrap around the back of the train. She got a grip and began to pull on the train. It just needed to be going a little slower. A little slower and would make it around the bend. But then a diamond dog got lucky. One dog threw a table like a discus, making it spin through the air. Twilight moved her head to the side enough to avoid being struck by the head by a chunk of wood. But as it spun, part of it came back around, and it hit the back of her head, making Twilight see stars. Her spell disappeared in the wind, and she fumbled in the air trying to stay aloft. It was, in the end, a fruitless effort. Twilight couldn't keep herself up, and had to resort to a hard landing beside the tracks. She skipped and ran a few times, dispersing some of her forward momentum before falling forward. She tumbled head over hoof once in the dirt before landing on her stomach. She gasped for breath, struggling to recapture some of the air that had been locked from her lungs. Twilight then looked up, searching for the train car. It was at the turn. The front end began to go around the curved pieces of track. As they did, the weight shifted. The car leaned to the left. Well, it was only a little at first, but as Twilight watched, the car tilted more and more. The wheels on the right side began to lose contact with the track. But for the moment, it looked like she had done enough. For a moment, to her eyes, it looked like the car wasn't going to derail. But then she saw the diamond dogs in the back. They, like those within, threw their weight to the left side. The additional shift was the final push the car needed. It lost balance and began falling to the left side. Twilight watched in silent horror as the train car fell off the tracks and tumbled over the edge of the cliff. Images flashed in her mind the moment the car disappeared from sight. Memories of the dream of T-Rex holding Nix's broken glasses and Spike's shattered scales. Tears welled up in her eyes as she scrambled to her clothes. She took to wing, ignoring every pain and ache as she flew after the car. She reached the edge of the cliff, just as the sundering sound of splintering trees reached her ears. The car reached the bottom of the cliff, casting through the forest below and impacting the ground below. She lingered there for a moment, hovering above the edge of the cliff in disbelief and horror. She feared the worst. But she pushed those thoughts from her head and dove. She dove, plummeting down the cliffside like a hawk swooping out of the sky. If there was any chance, any hope, she had to get to next Spike quickly. Twilight! Twilight! Shining armor trotted up the tracks. Maud was staying with Cadence, making sure she stayed safe. They gave Shining the freedom to chase after Twilight and the dogs, but she still hadn't found them. Surely they couldn't have gotten that far ahead. Fears of her sister being lost in the vast mountains, or being captured, began to creep into Shining's mind. But like mist in the morning sun, they burned away when he caught sight of the familiar purple cutter. Twilight flew slowly into view, rising from behind the lip of the cliff. Shining broke into a gallop, closing the gap to separate them as quickly as he could. Twilight was the antonym to Shining's haste. She was flapping her wings just barely enough to stay in the air. It didn't even seem to register Shining was there. She looked exhausted to the point it was sheer willpower that was keeping her moving. Twilight! Shining shouted once more when they were feet of each other. He came to a stop just as Twilight landed, let her leaned against his shoulder for support. Are you okay? What happened? They're gone, Twilight said, not wanting to hear the words for herself. They got away? But how'd they get away from you? The hint of accusation in Shining's voice, so wasn't intended, ignited Twilight's anger like a barrel of oil. Her brow furrowed and wings spread. She glared at Shining even as she continued to use it for support. "'Cause those dirty dogs made the car fall off the tracks, fall off the cliff, fall through the air, and crash into the forest down there. Yet, somehow, during all that, they managed to pull a disappearing act that would make Trixie jealous. They found I searched the forest twice. Twice! First, randomly, then, in a careful grid. They are nowhere to be found!" Twilight pointed her hoof. "And why did you throw that dog?" Shining was dumbstruck for a moment, trying to think of what to say to Twilight that would make the situation better. Then remembered the big dog that had been restraining his wife. "I had to get him off of Cadence. What was I supposed to do? There were a million things you could have done that were better than throwing it at the train. I was levitating the train, but because that dog hit it, it fell out of my magic. It had somehow fixed the brakes. They wouldn't have been able to get away if you had just thrown the dog into the forest. Twilight, you can't think that this was my fault." "Sure I can. I'm doing it right now." With a grunt, she took her weight off of Shining. She steadied herself for a few moments before turning to glare at Shining. "They got away with Spike and Nix. My family, and it's your fault. See? Easy." Twilight's final words carried a heavy sarcasm, like a thick frosting on cake. "Why were you levitating the car in the first place?" Shining asked. words growing harsh as he began to defend himself against his sister's accusations. The brakes were broken. They weren't going to be able to go anywhere. That tall dog was basically locking himself into his own cage. Well, Twilight puffed out her cheek, as if there were 1,000 words trying to come out at once. But none of them were an appropriate rebuttal for Shining's accusation. Eventually, Twilight just let out a sound that was halfway between a frustrated groan and a roar. She dropped to her haunches, brooding for a few seconds before looking back to Shining. Where's Cadence and Maud? Back down the track waiting for us, and keeping an eye on our new little friend. We caught a small diamond dog. He was left behind by the others when they made their escape on that train. And you still have him? Twilight asked, a small smile forming to celebrate the bit of good fortune. She walked away from the cliff, trotting along the tracks, back the way Shining had come. Good. He can tell us where the rest of his friends went. Then you and I could go after them, save Nix and Spike, catch up with Maud and Cadence, and go to the Crystal Empire. Then I can find that spell and finally put this whole messy mess behind me. Shining ran up a few steps until he caught up with Twilight. They matched their pace as they trotted along the track. Twilight, I know you're worried. I am too. But I can't just leave Cadence with Maud. I have to make sure she gets to Lumberton. What about Nix and Spike? What about my wife and my unborn foal? Shining asked a rebuttal. Cadence shouldn't even be out here. Not after everything that went on with T-Rex. We need to get her someplace safe first. Someplace with a real bed and real food. Well, we can't go all the way to Lumberton now. That'll just let those diamond dogs get further away. I know, but they didn't take Spike and Nix just to hurt them. Shining said, trying to calm Twilight. They want a ransom. And on top of that, we have that little dog. The little dog can help us find him. Besides, it's going to start getting dark soon. And the dogs know the terrain better than we do. Chasing them now would make it easier for them to capture you and me. And there's nothing to stop them from getting Maud and Cadence. Twilight focused her frustration in a mixture of grunts and grumbles. But she was too tired to protest further. Shining had the military experience in this situation. Yes, perhaps she didn't agree with how he was prioritizing matters, but he was right about one thing. Diamond Dogs had no reason to hurt Nix and Spike. Not like T-Rex. They would be alright. Spike would take care of Nix. He was a good big brother like that. Greedy ponies are getting nothing out of me! Nothing! What's your name? Biscuit! And that's all you need to know! That's all I'll tell you! The Diamond Dog pounded his paws against a smooth, magical surface. He had placed inside a magical bubble. A spell Princess Cadence was maintaining. She was resting in the shade of the tree just off the tracks, while Maud and Biscuit were on the soft earth. Biscuit's spiritual cage had been pressed into the dirt to keep him from rolling it around. And Maud was staring him down with her stone-like expression. You will tell me more, Maud said. I will not! Biscuit punched the interior of the barrier. You will. I won't! You will. I won't! I won't! Biscuit bounced with each word, jumping around the barrier in a small, yipping like dog he was. Instead, however, Maud raised her head forward. Less than an inch separated her face from the face of the spear. The sudden movement made, Biscuit fell onto his back, eyes fixed on Maud. A certain terror filled his core as he saw her usually flat expression fall into a slightest frown. You will tell me what I want to know. Okay! Okay! Biscuit whined, tail sticking up between his legs. Stop the scary face! Stop frowning! Maud's lips relaxed, and even with that slightest motion, the sense of impending doom that Biscuit had been feeling dissipated. He slowly climbed back onto his paws, before looking over at Cadence and pointing a claw at Maud. You should keep her in that barrier spell, fat one! She's crazy! Crazy! The spiritual spell grew very small. Biscuit found himself crammed up against the side. Cadence was glaring down at him now, horn glowing as the spear grew a little smaller and tighter. What was that? Oh, pretty pink Princess Pony? Yes, you're very pretty and pink. Yes, very pink too, and pretty. And so thin. How do you do it? Cadence gave a satisfied nod and turned the spear to its normal size. Still, even as Biscuit recovered from his near crushing, the barrier was turned, bringing his attention back to Maud. Where would your friends taken Nix and Spike? She asked. Lots of places. I didn't know which one. We just found out and came out here to find gems. We didn't come here to putnap ponies. Duke might take them back to main den, or he might take them to Outpost Cave. How many Outpost Caves are there? I don't know! Biscuit snapped and waved his arms high as he could in the bubble. Don't need to know. We're prospectors. We find gems, send report back to main den, then they send dinners. We hardly use Outpost Caves. Only Duke would know where most of them are.
He's the only one that needs to know. I just find gems. Pretty gems.
Why did Diamond Dogs love gems so much? Cadence asked. She grunted and hauled her gravid form up, before walking out from beneath the shade of the tree. She levitated Biscuit's sphere off the ground, as she held the small dog to her eye level. You're not dragons, so you don't need to eat them. And I doubt you have a hoarding instinct like a dragon's either.
Why do pretty ponies like pretty flowers and pies? Diamond Dogs like gems because we like gems. We use them as money. We use them as decorations. If you have a lot, you are a big shot. You are an alpha. If you have few, you're a prospecting dog digging dirt. You're like me, but I'm going to be alpha someday. Could be tomorrow if you give Duke drain of gems he wants.
That's not going to happen, Cadence said.
Well then, you'll never see your little ones again,
Biscuit said, daring to smile just a little. Wouldn't Duke be worried about you? Wouldn't he be interested in exchanging you for spiking nicks? Biscuit let out a long, dog laugh.
Diamond Dogs not like pretty ponies. We are pack. We are dogs. We worry about ourselves first, and pack us a whole second. Duke will pass up Jet Zone payday for just me. I wouldn't do it if I was in his paws. Want to know why? Because he knows and I know you pussy ponies wouldn't hurt me.
Once more, Cadence striked the spear down to its smallest size it could be, forcing Biscuit to contort into an odd shape as his limbs and face pressed against the barrier.
Okay.
Biscuit yelped, getting Cadence to return the spear to its regular size. I have an idea, Maud said, and with no further explanation, she turned and began walking down the tracks. Cadence and Biscuit glanced at one another, each hoping the other had some idea what Maud was doing. Still, neither had an answer, and she could only watch as Maud continued walking down while keeping her eyes focused on dirt. She then abruptly stopped and began to scrap at the ground with her hoof. She did this for a good moment, before bending down, and with her teeth, removing something from the ground. He then reached back and pulled it back over to Cadence and Biscuit. Got Clover. It became plain to see the thing in her mouth was a gem the size of a crab apple. Biscuit pressed his face willingly against the edge of the spear, wiped his tail.
How did you do that? Tell me, how did you do that? Can I have it? So pretty. Can I have it? Please, can I have it? Pretty great pony. Can I please have it? So pretty.
You can have it, Maud said. Simple words that made Biscuit backflip for joy in the spear. An impressive feat for considering the minimal space. But you have to do something for us. Biscuit's jubilation ended, and he eyed Maud with uneasy curiosity.
What do you want me to do?
You help us. Cadence smiled and turned the spell spear, making Biscuit once more in the eye. Yeah, you'll help us. You'll help us find Nix and Spike, and if you do, we'll give you gems. Biscuit glanced over the gem Maud held, twiddling his paws and thought,
How many gems?
We'll give you that one now, and once every pony is back in Crystal Empire safely, you'll be allowed to leave with all the gems you can carry.
I want all the gems I can put in a cart.
Biscuit haggled, motioning towards himself.
Look at me! I'm tiny! You're trying to swindle me with my own size!
All right, but you aren't getting a cart full, Cadence said. Then he fell silent for a few moments, contemplating the negotiation before making a new offer. How about a suitcase full? We'll even get you a nice one with wheels so you can pull it like a cart. Biscuit twiddled his claws again, then clasped them together, put on a big, pleading smile, and tried to perform his best puppy dog face.
Can the suitcase be made of gems?
Cadence rolled her eyes at the display, but nodded. Yes, it can. Giggling, Biscuit nodded and said,
Yes, that's a lot of gems. Biscuit can be group leader like Duke with that many gems. Now, give me that one. I want that one. It's so pretty. I want to hold it. It's an emerald, right? I want to hold my emerald.
Cadence opened a small hole in the barrier spell, then gestured with a hoof towards Maud. The gray mare took a single step forward, bringing the emerald within reach. Biscuit grabbed it instantly, then laid it back on the spear, and happily giggled as he examined the gem in the fading sunlight. He just betrayed Duke for a pile of gems bigger than he was. Duke would be so proud.